What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live here on a Thursday. We had a shocking trade today, Eric, that went down about, 11, 12 hours ago. And it was perfect timing because we have a stream tonight and we're going to touch on it. The trade is Donovan Mitchell is a Cleveland Cavalier. He ends up going to Cleveland. All the rumors were around him going to the New York Knicks. Instead, Cleveland, out of nowhere, off the top rope, comes in, snags Donovan Mitchell. Some of the trade packages got leaked that apparently the Utah Jazz turned down. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about how good we think, I almost said Phoenix. We'll talk about how good we think Cleveland's going to be next year. They're going to be a fun team. And we'll talk about maybe some comparisons between Cleveland's roster construction and Portland's. There's differences, but there might be some similarities as well. And they'll be interesting to watch. Alex Wolf, are you in here? Alex Wolf is our resident Cavs fan. Hopefully he shows up for this stream to celebrate, because honestly, man, I'm liking this Cavs team. The Cavs were fun last year. Should have made the playoffs if they were healthy, and they add Donovan Mitchell. They end up giving up Lauri Markkanen, Ochai Agbaji, who they took with the 14th overall pick, and then what was the third piece they gave up?
Who'd you say? Agbaji?
It was Agbaji, it was Markkanen, and it was Colin Sexton in a sign and trade, who was still a free agent.
Yes, there you
go. Yeah. So, 3 unprotected firsts in 2025, 2027, and 2029, and then there's a couple swaps in there as well. That's the package going back to Utah for the star guard Donovan Mitchell. Anyway, Eric, what's going on, man? How was your day, and what was your initial reaction to this trade?
My initial reaction was just shock. My day was good, by the way. Thanks. How was yours?
It was good, man. I forgot there was a stream. So I've been working on the top 100 player series. I dropped the first video of that over on the main channel, so definitely go check it out. I put in a lot of work on it, so hopefully you enjoy it. Doing some new animation stuff, and you can see what I'm doing if you click on that video. But I've been trying to get ahead. So I've been grinding that, a little burnt out, and then you reminded me that we had a stream tonight at like 9:15. So, yeah, cooked up the thumbnail, and but I'm excited to talk about this stuff. Yeah. You had a guest appearance today.
Yeah, so I was getting ready to go on Samson Folk's show, which should be out next week sometime. He's doing a series kind of like what Kenny was doing to kind of check in with every team, but he also wanted to get just like a national perspective from different fan bases on what they thought of his team, and then also, introduce his Toronto fans to other teams, situations and stuff like that. And we had a really awesome conversation. I can't wait for that to be out next week. So it's going to be pretty cool. But right before we went on, that news broke. So we were like, oh, crap, man. And he was actually filming another one of those episodes with someone else when it happened, and both their jaws just dropped. He dropped a little preview of that. But yeah, because Toronto was one of the teams that was rumored to be sniffing around Mitchell. So, I've talked about that for a little bit. That's pretty cool.
Mitchell would have made a ton of sense for them, but instead he goes to Cleveland. And Cleveland doesn't have to trade Mobley. They don't trade Jared Allen. They don't trade Garland, of course. They were never going to. But now you have a big four. Mobley, Allen, Garland, and Mitchell. Garland and Allen were all-stars last year. Mobley is a future all-star. And then Donovan Mitchell is like a borderline superstar. How good are the Cavs now?
I think they could be really good because they still have, Rubio, Jetty Osman, Kevin Love, who had a bounce back here, LeVert off the bench. I mean, that's a really solid bench. And then their starting lineup is insane. I'm happy for them that they resolved the Sexton situation. I felt like they needed to get something for him. I mean, I guess I could have seen him bringing him back and then trying to move him later on down the road. But I felt like it was pretty obvious last year that they needed to split up the Garland Sexton backcourt. And when I saw the news, it took a while for them to report what the trade was. And I was just thinking in my head, as long as it's not one of Allen, Mobley, and Garland, and knowing that they owe a first already to Indiana next year, so they couldn't give up like 4 firsts. Like I was pretty sure that they would win that trade, regardless of what they gave up, as long as they kept those big 3. And yeah, and they did. And it's kind of weird that they're the team going for it. That's crazy that they went from, kind of making a fun story and almost making the playoffs last year to now are they contenders? Like that's a crazy jump from one year to another for a small market team like that. But kudos to them for going for it, man.
They are contenders. They are a top 4 team in the East now. They are in the top 4 with Boston, Miami, and Milwaukee. All right.
They're better than Philly now?
Yes. Because they have the potential to be top 5 on both ends of the court now. Mm-hmm. Like, you got Mobley and Allen, and you got Isaac Okoro, who's probably going to be the starting 3, who's a good defensive player as well. Like, that front court is one of the top 5 front courts defensively in the league, and I think that can make up for a porous defensive backcourt in Mitchell and Garland. But I always thought Mitchell had the potential to be solid on that end if he had maybe some better defensive pieces around him, could press up a little bit more on the perimeter and have rim protection behind him. Like, I feel like Mitchell will be fine defensively in Cleveland. Even if he's not, though, man, you have the best rim protection pairing in the entire NBA with Mobley plus Jared Allen. And when Sexton and Garland started together last year, they were still a very good defensive team. So I don't see how Mitchell and Garland is any worse. That was with them starting Markkanen at the 3. Isaac Okoro is a much better defensive piece at the 3. They have the potential to be a borderline top 5 defensive team just because that front court is so good defensively. And then on the offensive end, you have probably a top 3 backcourt in the league. You got Garland, who was an all-star last year, 21-8, and then you got Donovan Mitchell, who's one of the best scorers in the league and can make plays for others as well. And you're telling me both those guys are going to be able to run pick and rolls with Allen, with Mobley. You can stagger both those guys. You can stagger both Allen and Mobley, and then you got that firepower coming off the bench with Love, with LeVert. They have the potential to be top 5 on both ends of the court. We say the bar is a team that's top 10 on both sides of the floor is a contender, right? Mm-hmm. I don't see how they're... I think they're going to be top 10 on both sides of the floor. So I don't see how they're not a contender. I think they have a chance of going to the finals next year in the East. I think that... they were a playoff team, if healthy, last season. And they're young, so they're only going to get better even if they didn't make this move. I just had them as a playoff team next year even if they didn't make this move. And then you had Donovan Mitchell. It's just... Yeah, they're a top 4 team in the East, in my opinion.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you don't think Mitchell had that defensive presence in Utah?
I think he had moments. I know
last year it wasn't great, but...
He had moments, but he was never consistent.
No, you said him having better defenders around him, but Utah was pretty good up until this season defensively.
They were good defensively, but how much of that was Gobert and how much of that was the other pieces around him?
I'm just saying
because he's playing next to Conley, who's lost a step defensively. He's playing next to Bogdanovich, who is a mediocre defender. Clarkson plays a lot of minutes. I was never impressed with their defensive personnel. I always felt like with Utah, it was Gobert for the most part carrying the defense during the regular season, and then the playoffs it'd fall apart because they didn't have the best defensive pieces around that.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at what they. Just a second. So. Last year they were 9th in defensive rating. I was talking more about the previous year when they were the 1 seed. They were 4th. Yeah. So yeah, pretty good. But yeah, Royce O'Neal, Conley. The year or 2 before that he hadn't quite fallen off yet.
Yeah, you had some solid pieces, but you didn't have 2 elite rim protectors. You had one. You had Gobert, who made up for a lot of it. But
Hassan.
Oh God! Don't even bring his name. He doesn't belong in this conversation. You got. I'd take I've never been the biggest Isaac Okoro fan because I don't like his offensive game, but defensively, I mean, he's at least comparable to O'Neal, if not potentially better long term. And then, like, Mobley might be the closest thing we get to Rudy Gobert's rim protection in the next 5 years, outside of maybe Embiid and a couple others. And then Allen is one of the better rim protectors in the game as well, and Mobley can switch. Like, that pairing, I think, will make it easier on Donovan Mitchell. I mean, it worked last year with Sexton and Garland, so I'm confident in their defense, man. I mean, and when projecting Cleveland, I compare them to Utah, obviously, because you got Donovan Mitchell. Mm-hmm. You had Mitchell and Gobert, and then you had basically some role players, a Conley, a Bogdanovich, whatever. They got the 1 seed a couple years ago in the West. I don't think that team is better than this Cleveland team, because you didn't have that. Like, this is going to be the best guard by far that Donovan Mitchell has ever gotten to play next to, right? They'll have to figure out how it works offensively together. But then you don't just have, Gobert, right? You got Mobley, who's a little worse defensively, but has more potential offensively. But then you got Jared Allen on top of that, which is far and away better than any other second defensive piece that Utah had, in my opinion. So you have the extra firepower offensively, and you have that extra defensive piece as well. I mean, I don't know. Would you say the Utah Jazz team that got the 1 seed is better than this Cavs team right now?
Well, it's hard to say because you haven't seen the Cavs play, but I mean, that team was really good in the regular season, and I don't think they just had like normal components to their team other than Mitchell. I thought a lot of those guys stepped up and had good seasons that year. So, but when you have guys like Clarkson, they can shoot you in or out of games. I don't like those kind of guys on good teams. But yeah, it's talent-wise, I think you probably have to go with the Cavs just because they got 2 bigs instead of 1, like you mentioned, and Garland is better than an older Conley. It's tough to say whether he'll be better than prime Conley quite yet, but that's certainly a strong argument, like for the Cavs being good. But I also think a lot of teams in the East are going to be freaking good, and this is going to make the top so interesting to see how this plays out because Milwaukee's not going anywhere. I think Philadelphia is going to be pretty good, even if they're the 5th seed. The team I talked about today, Toronto Raptors with Sampson, I mean, that team's going to be really legit, and they have the defensive pieces to basically guard almost any team. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Boston, of course, do they keep it up from last year? Man, crazy. I'm glad these pieces are moving out to the East though, and not staying in the West, because it's gonna make it there's a lot more balance than it has been, at least at the top. I think there's like a legit 5 teams in both conference that could possibly win next year, and that's going to make the NBA really fun. And that's another reason why I'm glad that Kevin Durant didn't get traded to the Suns, just because I feel like this is going to be one of the most exciting seasons in a long, long, long time for the NBA.
I didn't want Kevin Durant in the West in general. Like, I didn't want Kevin Durant on the Warriors would have been a nightmare. Like, I got tired of Cleveland. Ironically, I got tired of Cleveland versus Golden State in the finals for 5 straight years. It was no fun, and any storyline that could have been intriguing, in the end it was like, oh, well, what does it matter? We're just doing cardio because in the end it's going to be Cleveland versus Golden State in the finals, and none of this is going to matter. Like, it started to feel like that. You never want your league and your sport to ever feel like that, where the season's meaningless, and even at times like the playoffs are meaningless because it's just going to be the Cavs versus the Warriors. You never want to feel like that. And now it's ironic because the Warriors just won a championship, but I don't think they're the same Golden State Warriors that they were during those runs. I think the Golden State Warriors can be beaten in a playoff series by a number of teams in the West. Now, will that happen? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily bet on it, but Memphis took them to 6 games. That's a young Memphis team without much playoff experience. John Morant was hurt for a portion of that series, and they took them to a competitive 6-game series. So I don't think the Golden State Warriors are unbeatable. And then in the East, it's completely wide open next year, and the Cavs are now back in the mix, but it's LeBron James-less Cavs. It's the Cavs without LeBron. They haven't made the playoffs without LeBron in over 2 decades. For now, yeah, watch. That's what when I saw this trade, it's like, oh man, when is LeBron going to want to go home again?
You think LeBron is regretting signing that extension and not being trade eligible right now?
Man, I'm sure he would enjoy playing with... Yeah, imagine that lineup. Garland, Donovan Mitchell, LeBron, Mobley, and Jared Allen.
Yeah.
That would honestly possibly, outside of the Heat teams, be LeBron's best team ever.
Maybe, yeah.
Like, I would take that team over the team that won the championship with Kevin Love and Kyrie. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parity. It's super competitive. I like that he went to the East as well. I had another point I was going to make, but I completely forgot.
Well, you also have LeBron's current owner saying that Westbrook was the best player on the team.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, you know,
she walked it back a little bit, but
yeah. That's just ridiculous. I don't know, man. It's like they're trying to talk Russell Westbrook into playing good basketball. It's not going to happen, though. The thing is his confidence might be a little too high, not a little too low. That's kind of been the problem with Russ. But, I mean, you look at Cleveland, man. They have 4 all-star caliber players going into next year, and 2 of them, one of them's a borderline superstar in Donovan Mitchell. One of them, if he develops more and he's going into his 4th season, he's still like 22 years old, and Darius Garland, if he takes another step, like he could be a borderline superstar. 4 all-star caliber players, 2 of which could be young borderline superstars. They're young. Like, let me look at the ages of these guys. They're young, so they have this huge window in front of them. I mean, they're set up beautifully for the future. And it all started, I mean, they got Garland with the 5th overall pick, but that's the thing is, like, teams that struggle, like the Kings, right? They don't hit on those picks.
Yeah.
The Cavs, they hit on the Garland pick. And it didn't look good at first. Garland was really bad his rookie season. And then 2 years later, he's an all-star, right? So they hit on that pick. They got Jared Allen for what? 1 first-round pick? Or was it 2 that they gave up for Jared Allen?
It was only 1.
They gave up 1 first-round pick and got Jared Allen. They fleeced in that trade. That was the James Harden trade to Brooklyn. The Cavaliers fleeced the Nets for Jared Allen as part of that deal, multi-team deal. So, cashed in on the 5th pick, cashed in on a trade. And
it was
then
like a Milwaukee first, too. It was barely a first.
Yeah.
And then Houston ended up trading it. I forgot there were some weird protections on it when they traded Tucker to Milwaukee later that year, and then I think it went back to Milwaukee or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Evan Mobley with the 3rd pick already looks like that's going to pan out for sure, right? So, I mean, that's how you rebuild. You just got to, A, hit on draft picks, B, do trades for young pieces that end up panning out and, like, get good return on value, they got great return on value in the Jared Allen trade, and that's how you build a good young core like this. They have 4 all-star caliber players, all of which right now are 25 years of age or younger. Donovan Mitchell turns 26 in a week, but turns 26 in a week. That's still young. Jared Allen is 24. Evan Mobley is 20, barely 21 years old. Darius Garland's 22 years old. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, this is what OKC dreams of, and Cleveland accomplished it without ending up with 1 million first-round picks and doing everything that OKC's done.
Well, and too, when the Cavs had injuries last year, when Garland was playing, opposing teams were just selling out to stop him in the pick and roll. And now they can't do that because you got Mitchell on the other side of the court. So Garland's going to get a lot more open threes. Mitchell's going to space the floor for him. Mitchell, like you said earlier, can create a little bit. So he's just got some natural gravity that's going to give Garland some open looks that he's not going to have, and hopefully that's the same case with the Blazers with Dame and Ant. But yeah, so it's going to be really exciting to see. The only question mark now becomes, is JB Bickerstaff up for the challenge of being a championship coach with that roster, or will he be a little in over his head? But I like some of the stuff he did last year with the defense, having Mobley and in a zone, like play the middle top area. But yeah, he's going to have to come up with some other creative stuff because there's so many different things you can do with that lineup.
I mean, the thing is, man, I think this team is built to carry like the most mediocre of coaches to an NBA Finals potentially, because like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are going to cover for so much defensively. You can probably run anything defensively and it'll at least be solid because you have two elite rim protectors, right? And then offensively, dude, you could run Stott's fence, and Stott's fence worked. It struggled in the playoffs because teams defended well against it, but I mean, you just give Garland and Mitchell the ball and get out of the way. Like, shoot, you don't even really have to coach that team. That team is built to succeed on both ends of the floor. That's why I'm really impressed. And when I got into, studying the CBA and like, I have a passion just for watching organizations build the right way. Like, I enjoy that. That's why I learned the CBA, so I could understand what went into each of these moves and how GMs make it work, right? And I'll get on here now, rant about bad team building and what I think are bad moves by teams. I love, even though I'm not a Cleveland fan at all, I just love seeing a team build the right way and build a lineup that's going to be really fun for years to come. So I enjoy that, man. So I saw this move today, man, and I was happy. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be awesome to see. I'm happy that Donovan Mitchell's in the East, and I think there's another thing about this that I haven't talked about yet, and I want your opinion on this. It's gonna be interesting to see if the undersized, mediocre, or poor defensive backcourt can win a championship, right? Because the narrative here in Portland has been you can't win a championship with two undersized guards, neither of whom are good defenders. Well, that's what you have in Cleveland with Garland and Mitchell, but you have the perfect defensive front court to complement them. So they are going to be interesting to watch because I think defensively their backcourt compares to Dame and Anthony Simons or Dame and CJ. The thing is we always talked about you got to put the right pieces around Dame and CJ or Dame and Ant. You already have the right pieces around Garland and Donovan Mitchell. So that's what's another factor of this is for me as a Blazer fan. And that's why Cleveland probably is going to be the team that I watch more than any other this season.
Yeah, I think more so than an all-in move for an all-star or whatever, that's going to be my biggest regret of the whole Dame and CJ era. And that's something when we're comparing Toronto's, last 10 years to the Blazers' last 10 years today. It came up a lot. Like Portland didn't put those defensive forwards around their guards, and then Toronto goes the exact opposite way and just goes after nothing since like 2018 has gone after nothing but athletic defensive forwards. And so I think I'm always going to wonder, like, if Olshey would have built some sort of roster around an athletic defensive front court with your two studs in the back court, would that have worked out? Would we be talking about this whole era in a much different light? And unfortunately, we'll never know, but there's still a little bit of time to do it with Ant and Dame, and hopefully Cronin figures that out. I think he's made some steps in the right direction, obviously, with bringing in defensive-minded guys, but you still need the guys who can guard 5 positions or at least 4 different positions, including big or a guard. And I feel like the Blazers still need that kind of player to take that next step. But yeah, certainly, as Taylor Packer mentions in chat, they're going to be probably the number 1 team to watch in League Pass this year, because that's just going to be such a fun team. And the East has a lot of those teams that are really fun to watch.
Yep. This is a silly question to ask on a Blazers channel and to a Blazers community, but which backcourt is better, Dame and Ant or Garland and Mitchell? I think they're comparable.
Yeah, it's always tough when because as of right now, I don't think you can say that Garland or Mitchell are better than Dame if he's healthy.
They're not. Definitely not.
And I don't think you can put Ant above either of those two yet. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
they're both proven all-stars. So you're talking about 1 and 4 versus 2 and 3.
Yep. That's why I was interesting thinking about it.
So yeah, I mean, I think Ant's going to make this conversation very interesting, but I think as of right now, you probably have to give it to their backcourt. But it's really close.
Yeah. Ant might be the better complement than any of those than Garland or Mitchell to each other, right? Like Ant is a phenomenal catch and shoot 3-point shooter. So as like in a secondary situation, he might be a better option than like Mitchell spotting up playing off of Garland or vice versa. But both those guys can shoot though. And both those guys will draw probably even more attention than Anthony Simons does. So that's the thing is like talent-wise, I mean, I'd take Dame over either of them, but like Garland and Mitchell both are extremely good. Like talent-wise, they might have the edge. Mm-hmm. But that's where it's going to be interesting to watch Cleveland and compare it to Portland because we've seen Dame play with Ant, but not like against starting lineups consistently for large portions of games. Like Ant has come off the bench and defenses haven't respected Ant like defenses will respect Ant next year, right? And when they did respect Ant, it was because Ant was starting for Dame. So I think the cohesion will work in Portland, but it's going to be interesting to see how cohesive and how good the fit is with Dame and Ant offensively, and then also look for the same thing in Cleveland with Garland and Mitchell. And, you know, Garland and Mitchell have more around them. So, honestly, I would say they're a better team than Portland right now. But if Garland and Mitchell isn't the most cohesive fit offensively, which I don't think is going to be the case, but if it's not, then they might be one of those teams that have more talent, but isn't necessarily better than a team like Portland. And Portland has had talent, you know, the past couple years, in my opinion. It just didn't really work out, wasn't cohesive. Norman Powell had some issues last year. He's a very talented player, but wasn't the lockdown defender we needed and didn't embrace trying to be a good defensive player. Like his effort was terrible, and then Rocco was out of position. He was supposed to be the defensive piece we needed. So, in the end, we can evaluate these moves on paper and talent-wise. I think Cleveland's the top 4 team in the East, but it does come down to how does everything fit together. Mm-hmm. You look at Memphis last year without Ja Morant, they were 20-5, and if you look at that roster without Ja Morant, you would not say that they are a top-tier playoff team. Right now, the 20-5 record, they faced some easy teams and whatnot, but their pieces fit really well together, and they played a brand of basketball that was greater than the sum of the parts without Ja Morant. So cohesion and fit matters, and it'll be interesting to compare Cleveland's and Portland's.
Yeah, well, honestly, it just depends on how much stock you put into Ant's, month or so of starting, right? Because if you extrapolate those numbers over a full season, they're very similar to what Garland did for the whole season last year on better shooting numbers. So if that is who Ant is, he might be better than Garland. And I don't think that's that crazy to say. But the reason why I have never been worried about Dame and Ant, other than maybe defensively, is because I feel like Ant's good in either role. And Dame in the past, he hasn't had a lot of opportunity to be like a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, but like the numbers bear out that he's elite at that, So, and Ant is already, top 5 in like catch and shoot. And I saw an interesting thing about his progression off like step back jumpers and stuff like that. And yeah, it's crazy because I think you're right where I'm not saying that Ant's better than Donovan Mitchell, but I think he meshes better with Dame. And I think the potential for them to be a cohesive backcourt, like you mentioned, and not just two guys taking turns like Dame and CJ seem to be, like that. I think that potential is greater than if Portland today traded for Donovan Mitchell. We're talking about a Dame and Mitchell backcourt. I don't know if that team, yeah, on paper it looks awesome, but I don't know how those two gel or work it out to where they're exchanging time, and Mitchell's not as good of a shooter as Ant. So like, what do you do? Like, I don't know. I think, yeah, I've kind of talking myself into choosing Dame and Ant, I guess.
I think the answer is whichever duo defends the best.
Uh-huh.
Whichever duo defends better. Offensively, I think they're comparable. I think they're pretty equal. Whichever duo defends the best is the better backcourt, probably. And it's, man, you got some interesting backcourts now. I mean, the other one in the East that's new is DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. With DeJounte Murray playing more of an off-ball role offensively. That's a questionable offensive fit, but Atlanta needed to get better defensively, and DeJounte Murray helps them do that. So it'll be interesting to see how that new backcourt works as well. And you got some storylines going into next year that make the league fun, man. It's going to be Cleveland in that backcourt, Atlanta in their backcourt. I mean, you just look at the East. The East is fascinating next year, even with mediocre teams like New York and Jalen Brunson. Will his addition get them back to where they were 2 years ago? Can Julius Randle bounce back, or did he just overachieve 2 years ago, which I think is the case? Toronto, if the thing is with Toronto could be better than Cleveland, but they need Scotty Barnes to break out into like a for sure like all-star borderline top 20 player, in my opinion, for that to happen. But he has that type of potential. So what is he going to do next year? Is he going to become that guy, the number one potentially in Toronto? I think there's a chance that happens. Then, you got Siakam as well, who's phenomenal. And then Harden looks fit and in shape. Like, can he bounce back into being old James Harden? And if he is, how good is Philadelphia, man? I mean, you got Boston, who got better after winning the East. You got Milwaukee, who got hurt by injuries in the playoffs, but they're back. You got Brooklyn with KD and Kyrie and that whole mess, but it sounds like they're going to run it back. Can they finally be what they were supposed to be, right? Brooklyn's an afterthought, and they got Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. That's how wild the East is. So I'm loving the East, man. I'm looking forward to it next year.
Well, just a side note, the Blazers are apparently going to trade for Julius Randle, according to Bleacher Report, and we're going to give up Hart, Nasir Little.
That's a trade suggestion.
Justice Winslow and a first-round pick, yeah. Because we need another star. That's Dame's problem. We just needs a star, man. We just need to do whatever it takes to get a guy like Julius Randle.
Julius Randle is not even a star, man. I don't care if he made the... Honestly, hot take. This might be a little bit of a spoiler, all right? Still watch my top 100 series that I'm dropping the next 11 days, all right? Even though this is a little bit of a spoiler. In my opinion, Josh Hart's a better player than Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't have more natural talent, but in terms of like finding fit on a team and putting that player in a role that works and helps a team win, I'd rather have Josh Hart than Julius Randle, straight up.
I agree. But the problem is, we have guys that are all similar, like guards. So if Josh Hart was like in Julius Randle's body, he would be like an all-NBA player.
Yeah, well, Julius Randle to me is power forward Russell Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people overrate him because he had one good year where he overachieved in 2020, 2021. Let me look at his stats. He wasn't even that efficient. He averaged 24 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists, right? You look at that, oh my goodness, that's phenomenal, right? This isn't last year, this is the year before. Man. But he averaged almost 38 minutes per game. He led the league in minutes per game, all right? So that inflates it a little bit. But he shot 41% from 3. Ooh, that's phenomenal. From 2, he shot 47%, which is bad. Like, Nurkic shot 56% from 2 last year, and he gets heat because he can't finish, quote-unquote.
Well, forward versus the center is a little different.
Yeah, I mean, still, though, 47% from 2, like, that's not super efficient. That's where the majority of his shots came. He did get to the line a lot, made 81% of his free throws, so, the true shooting percentage was 56.7%, which is right around average. And you'll take that. A guy with average efficiency, 24 points per game. The problem is he's not good enough to do that for multiple years. He overachieved during the regular season, And then what happened in the playoffs? He's not good enough to be the number one in the playoffs. He got absolutely shut down by Atlanta. And New York was just didn't even look like a playoff team in the playoffs. Because Julius Randle was not that guy. He shot 30% from the field in that playoff series. 30% from the field. Right? Like, he's not good enough to be a number one. Problem is, he's not good enough to be he doesn't fit as a number two or a number three. This is the argument I've made for a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
On his career, he's 33% from three. Last year, he shot 31% from three, right? The last 3 years, this is his three-point percentage, Eric. 27%, 41%, 31%. In his career, he's 33%. Guess what? The 41%, statistically, is an outlier.
Yep. Shout out to Gray Hughes investigates for a $5 donation. Hey, why do I hear people think the Blazers aren't going to be good? I don't get it. I think we'll be top 5 in the West. Mark it down. Don't you have a bet with him anyway?
Do I have a bet with him? I don't know. I remember something vaguely, but you're going to have to remind me if I do. Thank you,
Was it
Gray,
like the second round or something?
Was it? I don't know.
And you bet against it just because you said you'd be happy if you did.
Okay. Yeah, $50 second round. I honestly, dude, my memory sucks. I do not remember that, but I'll roll with that. Yeah. We need to write it down or something, because I promise you I do not remember.
Gray's going to remember.
I know. That's the thing. I'm counting on you guys to remember, because I don't remember it. End of the season, I probably won't remember, man. But yeah, $50 second round. I would bet against that. The West is good, man. I mean, I like Portland, but I don't know. Go ahead.
There's two things I'll say to that. One, who cares what other people think of what we're going to do? It doesn't matter. We've seen that time and time again with teams. It only matters what happens on the court, not who predicted what before the season started. And two, it's justified. I mean, as much as it sucks to say, the people aren't wrong that this team has not been good the last few years. We've struggled to make the playoffs. We've been below 500 years. Last year, obviously, was a complete disaster. We traded away, from the outside looking in, 3 rotational players and didn't get a whole lot back in those trades. Now it kind of made up for it with some of the moves this offseason. But, people that didn't watch us when we were bad don't know that Ant is ready to break out. They don't know that Nasir Little, how well thought of he is by the organization. They don't know that Nurkic is actually a quality center. They just hear people rag on him all the time and think he's like a bum, you know? And then, so looking at it from a national perspective, I understand why they're not being talked about. And then that doesn't even factor in how all these other teams are really freaking good. So, when you look at it from that point of view, someone's going to take Utah's spot, right? Because they're not going to make the playoffs most likely. So they're down in those bottom 5.
The Clippers didn't make the playoffs, so they got Kawhi back,
right?
and we helped to make them even more loaded.
But that's one team. I don't think. I mean, you can't say the Pelicans are worse. They're getting Zion back, right?
Yeah, here's the point I want to make. We would be saying that, if we were Suns fans, Grizzlies fans, Warriors fans, Mavericks fans after Western Conference Finals, Nuggets fans, they're getting healthy. The Timberwolves, if we were Timberwolves fans, Pelicans fans, they get Gobert, they get Zion. Clippers fans, you got Kawhi back. If we were fans of any of those fan bases, we'd be saying, yeah, we're for sure top 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 8 teams. Not all of them could be top 5. So... Yeah. I think Portland has higher upside. I think Portland has top 5 upside for sure, but I am not confident in them being up top 5.
Yeah, and the mailbag that dropped last week, I said I could see anywhere from 4 to 10, and I think that's realistic. 4 if we have some injury luck, both being healthy for our team, and getting other teams maybe some key injuries, and then all panning out on the floor. But when you think about it, I mean, I just don't understand. Like it's totally logical because like you take a team like Dallas, and someone could say, "Oh, they made the Western Conference Finals. I think Christian Wood's actually a good addition. I think JaVale McGee will solidify their center spot, and Luka can carry a team no matter what the roster is anyway. So I expect them to be like a top 5 seed or whatever." And that's a perfectly logical explanation. I could also see them like Luka having trouble and they don't have as good of a team around him and they're maybe fighting in the play-in. I could see that too. Like it's crazy. Like, and you could go through every team. Like the Clippers, they almost made the playoffs without Kawhi last year. They should have if Paul George doesn't get COVID, maybe. But like, so even if Kawhi only plays half the season or doesn't play at all, they might still make the playoffs anyway because they almost did last year. And then, like I said, the Pelicans have Zion back, so like they should be better, and they were looking pretty good at the end of last year. The Lakers, I mean, who knows? Like you hope. I mean, as all of us, sorry, Max, the Lakers fan in chat, but like everyone else in here is hoping that the Lakers are still a disaster. But it's certainly possible that LeBron and AD have a healthy season and they're fairly decent next year. You know, you can make a strong argument that they could be better than us. And then you factor in other things like Memphis is so young, like you said, they don't have like the greatest team on paper, and Jaren Jackson's out the first couple months, but they dealt with injuries last year and we're fine. So, like, can you really just write them off as not being a top seed again? Golden State won the championship. That's self-explanatory. Phoenix won 64 games last year and is basically bringing back the same team.
Yep.
I mean, Denver gets Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back and added Bruce Brown and KCP on the wings for defense.
And like, they were already a 48-win team last year.
Yeah, exactly.
So...
Jokic has proven he can carry a team. It's like, so, like, it's not a slight on the Blazers. It's just like you can make an argument for any one of those 10 teams to be in any order, pretty much. I think outside of maybe I think as long as the Warriors are healthy, they should be near the top. But other than that, I think you could make a case for any team dropping out of the playoffs or dropping in or being in the play-in or being a home court advantage team. So I don't think it's a slight on any team, especially in the Blazers position, because they're the one team that wasn't up there last year along with the Lakers. So the other 8 teams are more established and have pieces come back and got better, whereas the Blazers, you know, were bad last year and they weren't great the year before that. So like, I don't know. It's just got to all come together, I think. But I don't think it's a slight. I think it's just there's too many good teams and someone's going to miss out of those 10 teams. Yeah, I didn't mention the Timberwolves, and they got Gobert.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like, here's the thing. You can disagree with people, but still understand their argument. I understand why somebody would predict Portland to potentially be 4th. Like, you could make, it'd be a super optimistic argument, but you could make an argument in regards to, oh, the defense is going to be average because of these pieces and because of this is their system and they found pieces that fit their defensive identity, and an average defense for this team makes them a home court advantage team. Like, you can make a valid case for them being the 4th seed. You could also make a valid case for them being the 10th seed. Like, you could, like, that's the thing is you can't make a valid case for them being healthy and being like 13th again. Like, I don't see any valid argument for that, but there is a valid argument for anywhere between 4th and 10th. Okay, I understand why somebody would have them 4th. I understand why somebody would have them 10th. Like, and I'm okay with people predicting us to be 4th or people predicting us to be 10th, because I see why for both situations. In the end, we're just talking about projection. None of us knows for sure. Well, and if we're talking about projection, I was wrong last year, you know what I mean? So maybe they're better this year. But the thing is, I thought they were going to be better last year. So that's the thing. It's all projection. It's all just guessing in the end. Like, there's valid arguments that are optimistic, that seem pessimistic, that are all over the place. So I don't really have a problem with any of it.
Oh, so Taylor Packer says, I guess I just believe in this team will scare out games against more talented teams who play like we did last year. But that was my whole point at the beginning when I said, who cares what other people think? It'll all play out on the floor. I'm not saying the Blazers can't be good or won't be good. I'm saying like, what does it matter right now? Like, why? Like, who cares if someone's saying, "Oh, the Blazers suck. They're going to be so bad"? Because if they are like what you're saying, Taylor, then they'll prove it on the floor, and we'll be talking about how we could have home court advantage in the first round. And if they aren't,
here's the thing: if they do prove it on the floor, nobody's remembering this conversation.
Right?
Like, trust me, we're not remembering this.
But I could very easily see them being good, scrappy, scaring teams, getting wins over teams they shouldn't be. And the West is still so good; they're still in the play-in. Even if they're the 7th seed, they still have to win a game, or if they lose, have to win another game to make the playoffs. And so that's why it's so crazy, and that it makes it a lot of fun with the play-in because nothing's guaranteed, and it leaves all these spots open that might not have been otherwise. But yeah, it's just I don't think that there's anything wrong with underrating the Blazers. I kind of prefer to be under the radar versus last year when we were expecting them to be really good, and we heard all these things like, "Oh, we have the best net rating in the league the last 20 games," or whatever, you know. So yeah, and as McCollum fan 3 says in chat, Portland is plus 195 to make the playoffs. So if this is your thing, if you believe in the Blazers, make some money off it, man. Bet some money and cash in there at the end of the season and have something to show for it.
Yeah. Like, the thing is, I mean, dude, it's gonna be interesting to see the comments on my Western Conference standings prediction video because I'm struggling. I don't know exactly where I will predict the Blazers to be, because I don't want to predict the Blazers to be better just because of chat and just because of the comment section and just because of the people that watch this channel, right? Like, I want to entertain you guys and make you guys happy and bring you guys good content. That's why I'm doing daily uploads through September, right? But when it comes to, like, actually speaking my mind, I will always try not to be swayed by the fact that there's this YouTube community. I will try and say what I think, positive or negative, if I get heat or if I don't, right? And I will always try and make the most logical case for what I think, and I'll always try and back it up. I'm struggling going into next year, man, because I like Portland. I just think the West is loaded more so than it has been in the past 5 years. It's deeper. Like, there's 10 good teams in the West. Probably 7 or 8 really good teams in the West. It's not a knock on Portland, man, but at this point I have them. I can't have them higher than 7. I struggled to.
And Gray Hughes says the beauty of the league right now is anyone can win it. Lots of parity, no super teams. Okay, so agreed, right? Like, we talked about that earlier, how it's so fun that there's legitly a handful of contenders on both sides. So if there's parity, let's just say perfect world, there's parity, right? Wouldn't that mean exactly what we're saying? That, like, any team could jump up or any team could be bad or good. Like, it's just going to be a matter of what happens on the floor. So that's all our point is. We're not saying that Portland's not going to be good. Oh, they're definitely going to be the 10th seed. I think they could be really good. And it might not be factored into the record. It might just be that they're right there with a bunch of other good teams.
Let me put it this way. If there was no parity, Portland would probably get a higher seed during the regular season. They'd probably be more like 4th, 5th seed line instead of maybe 7th or 8th, in my opinion, right? But they would have less chance of making a playoff run to the finals if there was less parity. Like, with more parity, you don't have parity without a lot of really good teams. That makes it harder to be a top 4 or top 5 team. But you don't have like a Golden State Warriors team that's just absolutely stacked that you can't beat. So you have an actual chance to make a run from the 7th seed to the finals. Whereas if we were the 3rd seed a couple of years, we had no hope of beating Golden State, even when they were hurt. We still got swept by them, right? And, another year we were the 3rd seed and got swept by the 6th seeded New Orleans Pelicans. So, we focus a lot on seeding, because it's always like, we're trying to get home court advantage, but contending teams in the East that know they're going to make the playoffs, they don't care about seeding. Contending teams in the West, they don't care about seeding. Golden State was the 3rd seed last year, right? But when it came to facing Memphis, they were the favorites. So it's not even necessarily all about the regular season. It's going to come down to we got to make the playoffs, try and avoid the play-in, but then it's, okay, can we win games in the playoffs? Especially on the road if we don't have home court advantage. But I mean, you have too many good teams in the West, man. Like, sure, we add some pieces and we kind of restructured things, but like Denver was a 48-win team and they're adding Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and KCP and Bruce Brown. Like, that's more than we're adding. Okay, Dallas 152 made the Western Conference Finals. They lose Brunson, but they add Christian Wood. Like, that might backfire, but there's so many cases to be made for every team, man. Like,
so fun.
Oh, yeah, it's fun. But I mean, we have a chance to beat any team in the West next year, I think, if everything breaks right. But I haven't felt that way in a long time. But I also don't think we're a home court advantage team.
I feel that's a good statement. I think we have the pieces to adjust and make changes. And hopefully, I mean, we don't know what Chauncey would be like in a 7-game series yet. So that's another factor we don't know about. It's hard to project. But I think we have the personnel now to throw different coverages on defense and to run different sets on offense than we have the last few years. And that's one thing that, if you missed that stream where I mentioned some things that someone had told someone I know from Dame himself, is that he feels like they finally have the personnel to run some of the stuff similar to the Warriors, whereas for years they talked about doing it, but did they really have the right guys to run it? Now, you and I can argue that you don't necessarily need the perfect roster to do it, but I mean, having playmakers and guys who can create and move the ball well and move without the ball in the right way and stuff like that, that all helps. So I think Dame feels like this roster is more capable of doing extra stuff than they have in previous years.
Let me take a couple donuts. Shout out Chris Brandlin, $5 donut says, does Utah getting Markkanen improve our chances of landing Vanderbilt? Thank you, Chris, for the $5 dono. I don't think it affects it whatsoever. I don't think Ainge is going to come down off his asking price of a first-round pick for Vanderbilt, and I don't think this trade changes that whatsoever. So it's going to come down to, is Portland willing to pay it, and what pieces are they sending out to try and stay below the tax, because I fully expect that to be a part of the equation.
Yeah, I'm just going to answer that question the same way until something changes. Jared Vanderbilt, if we got him for nothing or for like a second-round pick or something, they probably consider going back in the tax for him. If they have to give up a bunch on top of going back into the tax, it's not happening. So, yeah, it's unless, like you said, Ainge somehow just wants to give him away, which is very unlikely considering there's still, I mean, there's probably half the teams in the league today where we're like, oh, does this make Jared Vanderbilt available, you know? So they're going to get a good offer for him. I would be surprised if they sold low on him, especially considering Ainge. I mean, he probably just keeps him if he doesn't get an offer better than what we can offer, since we can't offer a first-round pick. So between that, not being able to offer a first-round pick, not really having the right young guys to trade, or like, would you really want to trade many of our young pieces for Vanderbilt anyway? And then that combined with not having a first-round pick and being close to the tax, like, I just feel like the Vanderbilt thing is kind of unlikely at this point for us.
Yep, I agree. I wouldn't expect another trade this offseason. Shout out Hyperprime, $5 dono. Thank you, Hyperprime. Says, I would like to hear where you place the Blazers at the end of next season. I would like to archive it for then. Well, my standings predictions video will be my official prediction, and we will have an episode of Blazers Uprise Live in the preseason where we will get Eric's standings predictions as well as all our mods' standings predictions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so even our mods. And then I did a video this offseason, like at the start of the offseason, looking back and reacting to our preseason predictions from me, Eric, and all our mods. So I'll do that again next offseason, way off in the future. And I kind of figured out like the yearly content plan this summer. So we'll do preseason predictions for awards and for standings and all that, like start of October. All right, we still have a month until preseason even starts, so still got some time to talk about some other stuff, do a couple other streams that I've been teasing in the past. We've just got some news around this time, man. We've gotten, the Pat Bev trade and that whole stream, and then we got the Donovan Mitchell trade today, so Danny Ainge making some moves. The Kevin Durant stuff has kept some news for us to talk about on these streams, and now we're into September. I can't say the dog days of August anymore. We're in September, so it's crazy, man. I'm doing daily uploads until the start of the season. Like, it's basically close, but it's not here yet. All right, so if you guys don't know, if you haven't been paying attention, which I know a lot of people haven't, I'm doing daily uploads over on the main channel, Blazers Uprise. If you're not familiar with that somehow, just go search Blazers Uprise in the search bar. That's our main channel where we do post-game streams and videos. And I'm doing a top 100 player series right now. And then I will do player previews later in September, and then as we get into October, we'll talk preseason, that sort of thing. And then preseason post-game shows will be here on the second channel, and then regular season post-game shows on the main channel. That's how we do things. And looking forward to I don't know, man. It's kind of crazy already doing daily uploads, and things are ramping up so far. And Eric did that. Go ahead.
I'll just say Hyperprime, don't worry. We'll have our official things. They'll all be on the record. You'll hear it.
Yep. And you can make your official predictions in chat. But, Eric guested with Samson Folk. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
So he has that coming up. And then I started doing something on the side with Stephen Vaughn of 750 The Game, which is fun. So branching out a little bit in that regard. And then Saturday, we'll have a fantasy football draft here on the second channel. I originally started the second channel to do some random streams, and it just turned into like a whole show, Blazers Uprise Live. Didn't really see it going like that. I started during the pandemic because I wanted to stream random stuff because I didn't have anything to do. Basically now it's just the one random stream we do that's not really related to basketball is a fantasy football draft stream. So on Saturday at 7 p.m. we'll have that. Eric's in my league, and then some of our mods are in our league. We'll probably let them on the stream as well, so we'll be a bunch of us on stream. So if you're into NFL or fantasy football, definitely join us 7 p.m. on Saturday for that as well. Anyway, that's kind of the content update. I don't know why I don't know. It's good to update you guys and keep you guys up to date with I know I just said that twice, but it's good to keep you guys up to date with what we're doing. Anyway. Shout out Hyperprime $2 dono. Can we expect more content from Eric as well? In a couple weeks, you have another CBA video?
Yeah, I'm doing on the hard cap, just to refer to all season because it's going to come up a lot. And then also there was a question from the mailbag wanting us to compare benches from previous years that I thought would make a good video. So might do that sometime in September as well.
Yep. I'm thinking like late September, early October for the bench one. Mm-hmm. Like right as we hop into things, especially that will be after media day. So maybe we have more of a feel for what the bench is actually for sure going to look like. That, and then we plan on switching, like doing every other for mailbags. We talked about doing that in the past, but I want to do more videos during the season this year. I want to do some analytics stuff, and during the season we've gotten into post-game shows and I've just stopped doing videos, but this season I want to do more. So during the regular season we plan on doing I'm thinking a mailbag every week, but for each of us it'll be every other week, and we'll just alternate probably is the plan. Looking to evolve a little bit. Definitely never want to get complacent with the content and what we're doing. Always trying to push to make things better for you guys and keep you guys entertained.
Yep. And then George asked when training camp starts. The Blazers announced that they were going to be holding their training camp in Santa Barbara, California this year. Maybe just looking to get away and kind of having some teams do that as kind of a bonding thing. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But that starts September 27th, I believe. Media day is the day before that. So we're talking 3.5 weeks just about until that happens. So it's right around the corner, man. It's going to be fun.
Yep, it's crazy. It's crazy that it's September. Adam Smith says we are moving forward. Baseball playoffs coming up soon. The Mariners 1-7-0. Dude, I might be talking about some playoff baseball. I've never seen playoff baseball for my favorite freaking team because they haven't made it in 20 years, and I'm not that old yet. So I'm over 20, but I wasn't paying attention to baseball when I was 5 years old when they made it the last time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then football's right around the corner, and basketball's right around the corner as well. So yeah, man, I watch baseball, I watch football, I watch NASCAR, I watch a lot of different stuff. So it's a good time of year, man. This is like late September is kind of my favorite time of year, early October, where you got baseball playoffs, you got NFL, and you got basketball starting.
And then we got a Wizards fan in here, appropriately named Wizards fan. How would you rate their offseason, Tori?
The Wizards?
Yeah.
What'd they do again?
Well, they made the KCP
KCP
trade. They got Monty
for...
Morris and Will Barton, I think, in that trade.
That's a okay trade. I mean, they didn't do much. I like the Johnny Davis pick. I know he struggled in Summer League, but I still like him. Like, that was the best value on the board at 10. I don't know how he fits with Bradley Beal because I think they're both shooting guards. Neither one of them are really a natural point guard, but maybe that's the plan to play Beal there. I don't know. But the Porzingis trade was really good for them. It was a really good value move. So I don't have a negative opinion of their offseason. I like some of their young pieces. I like Rui. I think Rui's going to break out next year. Avdia defensively has surprised me. I mean, even Kuzma. Kuzma was 97th in my top 100. I never thought I'd put Kuzma in the top 100. I've always been kind of a Kuzma hater, but he like improved his playmaking and like his rebounding last year. Like, he had some improvement, had his best season of his career. Maybe he should have gotten out of LA sooner. Seems like the type of guy that would be phased by LA. But yeah, I think at some point you guys are going to have to pick a power forward or two. Kuzma, Avdia, and Rui is kind of overkill. Porzingis can be that second offensive piece. It's just like, how is that team going to defend anyone? Because Beal and Porzingis, I mean, Porzingis has just lost a step. I don't trust Porzingis defensively, and I don't trust him to stay healthy. And then Beal isn't a good defender, so I don't know. Like, that, it comes down to, can they figure it out on the defensive end? And they didn't really do anything to address that, considering they traded KCP. So, C. That's my grade.
Yeah, I think they need to make a consolidation trade. You heard some rumors about them being interested in John Collins. I don't know if Atlanta's still looking to trade him or not. I don't know if I like Collins' fit, but I like the mindset of, like, I think they need to take all those guys, pick one of the three, and trade the other two and try to improve the other forward position or try to consolidate there. I would, you can include Barton back in that for salary because I don't think he's really going to factor in too much anymore. But yeah, I like a lot of their pieces. I just don't think they have the right mix of pieces to get over the hump. Even if some of those guys take the next step, I still think they're a fringe playoff team at best if they, like, everything goes right for them and players improve.
But that's the problem, is they're not bad enough to get like a top 5 pick.
Yeah, exactly.
So they can't get that like star piece to maybe get them over the hump in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Or they don't get that like really good draft pick as an asset in trades. So they're kind of stuck in between. I mean, they re-signed Bradley Beal. You can't lose Bradley Beal for nothing. And I know he has a no-trade clause, but, I mean, the best plan would be to trade Bradley Beal at the deadline and get back a Donovan Mitchell-esque package, maybe a little bit more, from a team desperate for a star. And then at that point, then you see what you can get back for Porzingis as well. And then you move forward, you got some young pieces, you try and trade Kuzma as well, like you get back a bunch of picks. Rui is still young enough to be a part of a rebuild. Johnny Davis is obviously still young enough to be part of a rebuild. He hasn't even played yet, so he's a rookie. And then you just build things out from there. Avdia can be a part of a rebuild as well. And then you hope for a top 5 pick in this year's draft. This year's draft is loaded. And I think that is the best path for them moving forward. It's kind of the path that Utah's taken this offseason.
Yeah, Caleb, he has a no trade clause, which means he can veto any trade, but that doesn't mean they can't trade him if he accepts it.
Yeah. Yeah. They have to get his approval to trade him to a certain location, so that's how that works. Anyway.
But like any free agent, they're not available to be traded till, halfway in the
Yeah.
season anyway. But
yeah.
Also, Washington does owe a first-round pick. It was originally part of the Wall Westbrook trade, and then it went to OKC, and now it's in New York as part of when OKC gave them the 3 firsts to get the 11th pick. But yeah, it goes down from top 14 protected to 12 to 10 to 8 over the next 4 years. So they're kind of like us, where they can't really put a package together with a bunch of firsts unless they change the protection on that.
God, dude, like, just the fact that you brought up New York, like, I don't know how exactly this would happen, but I feel like a Wizards move would be to be barely a fringe playoff team at next year's trade deadline, and then trade, like, Rui, Avdija, and a future first for Julius Randle or something like that, and then just... like, that's the last move you should want to see as a Wizards fan. That's the last type of move you should want to see. Like, if you're going to trade youth or assets, like, you got to get a star. Like, you got to get, like, a Donovan Mitchell. You can't settle for a Julius Randle. Like, you just traded John Wall and a future first for Russell Westbrook. Where did that get you? It got you, like, what did that do? You know what I mean? It didn't get you to, it didn't even, were they the 8th seed that year? And then they weren't competitive at all in the playoffs? It didn't get you to the second round. So at some point, it's like you either got to take that risk for a true star and then try and fill out the rest of the roster with defensive talent and see if that gets you to, like, fringe contention, or you got to keep building around the youth movement. Whether that's keeping Beal or trading Beal, you got to build around the youth movement, or you got to go all in for a star. You cannot go halfway with going all in for, like, a Julius Randle and losing youth. Because then you're just basically directionless. Like, that's still going to end up with you not making the second round, and then what?
Mm-hmm. Maybe they should trade for Westbrook back. And Julius Randle.
I mean, just for entertainment purposes, sure. That would be a top 5 league pass team, but not because they'd be good, because it'd just be comedy watching Julius Randle play next to Russell Westbrook.
Yeah. So what team do you think's going to panic first from here on out? Do you think it's going to be the Knicks, since they missed out on Mitchell now? Do you think it's going to be the Lakers giving up both the 2027 and 29 first in a dumb trade just because they feel like they have to make something happen? Who do you think's going to make the next big panic trade based on them,
like,
not
this
off
season?
Yeah,
or like,
right, yeah. Or, I mean, it could not be this off season. It could fall into the regular season, but
I feel like there's not another big trade this off season.
Oh, you don't think Westbrook gets moved?
No. No.
No, I think they're gonna do something dumb and, like, trade him for, like, Bogdanovich and Clarkson or something, you know, and give up, like, 2 firsts for it.
Actually, that's very possible. Like, I don't think New York has a trade left in them. I think New York waits. I think New York thinks, like, with Brunson and with RJ Barrett and Obi Toppin continuing to develop, and then I think they think that Randall's going to be what he was 2 years ago, and they'll be a playoff team, and they can hold off until the deadline to trade those picks. I think that is kind of their mindset right now. It's like, okay, we lost out on Donovan Mitchell, but we still have a decent enough team to make a run at the playoffs, and then at the deadline, there should be, like, a true star that becomes available, and we want all our picks to be able to go all in, like, should Kevin Durant become available again, or whatever, right? I think that is the mindset of the Knicks. I'm just guessing here, but I think that's the mindset of the Knicks. Whereas the Lakers, I feel like they think they're good enough because obviously you got LeBron and AD, but they're not going to sit on their hands necessarily if they feel like a trade would make them better right now. And they don't have the assets to go all in for KD at the deadline. Like, at most, they have 2 first-round picks they can trade, and they have no youth. So it's not a situation where the Lakers are going to sit and wait because a Kevin Durant or star could become available at the deadline, because they wouldn't be in play anyways. The only types of guys they'd be in play for would be the Bogdanoviches or the Jordan Clarksons or whoever. So if I had to bet on who first, I would bet on the Lakers, but the only way that changes is if, like, the Knicks suck again this year and they're, like, I don't know, 7-17 or something to start the year, and then they panic and overpay for somebody that isn't actually going to change anything. But so if I had to pick, I would pick the Lakers.
Yeah, well, the Knicks do have things that get trades done. They have 3 extra firsts, I think, or maybe even 4 extra firsts. They have contracts, all different size contracts. They have both expirings and, long-term salary that they could maybe have to attach multiple picks instead of 1 pick or something to get off of. But I don't know. I could see them doing something, but I actually think it would be kind of smart for them to do something like Randall and Fournier for Westbrook, and then just eat Westbrook's salary for a year, and then have basically clear books other than RJ Barrett's extension on their roster next year, and then build around him and Brunson.
Yeah, well, that's not a panic trade to me for New York.
Right.
That's like a shrewd, smart move.
But that would be the Lakers. That would be the Lakers panicking if they gave up first. And then, yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, it just, if the Knicks trade like a couple of their firsts for like a Bogdanovich and a Clarkson, or like a Miles Turner or whatever, I don't know. Miles Turner doesn't really make much sense, but maybe a Buddy Hield. Like, that is some of the worst GMing that would occur in the past year. Because the problem is with the Knicks is they don't have that number 1 guy. Mm-hmm. Randall cannot be that number 1 guy. Even when he overachieved for a whole year, he got exposed in the playoffs. He cannot be the number 1 guy. I don't think Brunson can be that number 1 guy. They need a number 1 guy. And if they take away from their asset pool that could be big enough to go and get a number 1 guy in the future, if they take away assets from that pool to trade them for like Bogdanovich and role players, that's just stupid. That's just like that's the last thing that the Knicks should do. So they gotta wait until another star becomes available, because if they ever want to actually contend, they need to find a number 1 guy. The problem is, even if they got Donovan Mitchell, I still don't think they'd be contenders in the East.
Yeah,
they are in a bad position right now in terms of like direction, but they have a ton of assets. So they have to like find a direction and like act on it in the right way. It could be going young again, which they have the picks to do that, or it could be trading for a legitimate star. But playing in the middle, just like Washington, like moves in the middle are the worst thing they could do. Mm-hmm. Because it's directionless.
Pick a direction, yep. Oh, man. But the Knicks, you could say that for, what, a decade now? Like, when was the last time they've been trying to get a star for so long? I guess going back to the 2010 offseason when they thought they had a chance to get LeBron and ended up with a broken Amari Stoudemire, right? That's as far back as they've been trying to get a star on their team.
I mean, they had Porzingis, but then they traded him for like a couple firsts and cap space so they could chase stars. That's the problem. If they've gotten caught star hunting instead of actually putting together a multi-year rebuild process. I mean, it's just like RJ Barrett was the 3rd overall pick, so like that's part of the rebuild process. But honestly, for a 3rd overall pick, like that's not good return on value. I think for his career, his ceiling is a fringe all-star at best. I'm not saying, like, at the time, everybody would have picked RJ Barrett. I'm not saying it was the wrong pick or anything necessarily, but, I mean, you look at what the Cavs are already getting from Evan Mobley. Like, I'd much rather have Evan Mobley for the future than an RJ Barrett.
Oh, of course, but different drafts are different problems, I guess.
Yeah, like, but that's kind of the thing, is they haven't gotten that key young piece. Like, that's like a true star. Like, they haven't gotten their Donovan Mitchell through the draft. and then they've been caught star chasing, and then they make a fluke playoff run because Julius Randle overachieves, and then it's, oh, well, we need to act on this and try and contend, so we're going to continue to chase stars, and then they can't get the trade done for Donovan Mitchell. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, the Knicks are another one of those teams that should have just embraced a major rebuild a while ago, and because they didn't, they're now in a tough spot.
For sure. Which segues into a team that is actually rebuilding and appearing to do it the smart way. And that's the other part of the trade we didn't talk about today, and that's the Utah Jazz. What do you think of Ainge's job he's doing with this teardown?
It's kind of wild that they got more picks for Gobert than they did for Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. Well, I can't give him props, Eric, because supposedly he turned down 3 first-round picks, R.J. Barrett, Obi Toppin, and I forget what the other piece was. But
it was Mitchell Robinson, which leads me to believe that was a BS report.
I mean, if that's true, I would much rather have Obi Toppin and R.J. Barrett than Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen and Ochai Agbaji. Because the thing is for Utah is they're in a good position to rebuild, but the next 10 years is going to be about finding, like, a couple of stars, right? And building around them. Like, better than they built around Gobert and Mitchell. The thing is, Ochai Agbaji, like, yes, he was the 14th overall pick. I don't like Ochai Agbaji in Utah.
Oh, yeah, I liked him much better when he was going to be possibly starting next to Garland, of course.
Yeah, like, he's a good rookie who can have a role on a good team, but, like, upside, I don't think he has a ton of upside. So what, he's going to maybe make them a little bit better when they're trying to tank the next 2-3 years? Like, it's just... And he doesn't have that upside to turn into a star. I don't really like Agbaji for them. Markkanen, I don't like for them either. Maybe he can finally fulfill his potential, and he's been playing good in international play, but...
It's a good, like, guy you could possibly flip for a first or something down the road.
Yeah, and then... But, like, Sexton is... He can put up star numbers, and he's coming off this injury, but he averaged 24 points per game, but, like, he's one of those guards that puts up really good numbers on bad teams, but, like, I don't know if his game translates to winning basketball, right? So, I'm not enamored...
TBD on that, probably.
Yeah, I'm not enamored with any of the players they got back in the Mitchell trade. Whereas, like, R.J. Barrett, Obi Toppin, I would have rather had that. Because Obi Toppin looked phenomenal to end last year. He has potentially, I know people will say he doesn't have star upside, but he looked kind of like a star late in the season, and Thibodeau just didn't play him as much as he should have been playing. So, I don't know. I'd rather have Barrett than Sexton long term. I'd rather have Obi Toppin than Markkanen. So if he truly turned down that package, then I don't like that, but who knows if it was real, as you said.
There's also the 2 pick swaps that they got from all unprotected.
Yeah, I mean, like, for Gobert and Mitchell, getting back 7 unprotected firsts, right? And then 2 unprotected pick swaps is good.
I think a couple of the Minnesota are lightly protected, but...
Yeah, regardless, like, that's good. Mm-hmm. And you get back Vanderbilt, you get back, I don't know, some pieces, I guess.
Here's the problem, though. Okay, it's hard to know, like, 5-7 years in the future, right? But Boston, when Danny Ainge did this, he did it knowing that Pierce and Garnett at the most had like 2 years, right? Yeah. What do we talk about with the Cavs, or what did you mention? All their ages and how they opened up a long window, right? That could very easily last 7 years. If they stick them together, right? So instead of getting like 3 top 5 picks, all of a sudden you're getting the 25th, 27th picks 5 years from now.
Yeah.
The only difference is Boston kind of remained good through that. Like, they never really completely bottomed out. And so Utah, that's what they have to do. They have to bottom out and hit on those picks with their own picks, and then from there supplement that with these other picks, like San Antonio, getting Tony Parker in the 20s and Manu Ginobili in the second round. in addition to having David Robinson and Tim Duncan. So like you have to build your roster and do it smart, because I don't think it's going to be quite as easy for Ainge. He's getting all this praise now, but the picks probably aren't going to be as good. It's hard to expect them to be close to what he got from there and hit that lightning in a bottle again.
Exactly, because he drafted Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum with picks that he got from the Nets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the picks, he was the first overall pick in the 2017 draft, and he traded down to 3. That's when Philadelphia traded up from 3 to 1 to draft Markelle Fultz, and we all know how that turned out. So he hit on both those picks, and they were at the very top of the draft, right? Like,
and props to him for drafting both those guys, because those weren't like consensus picks at the time, even though you and I both like both of them. But yeah,
if Mitchell doesn't leave and they don't have like some crazy injury luck, or like, you know, assuming something wild doesn't happen, I think all 4 of those Cleveland picks are going to be in the 20s. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, the trade looks bad. Like, if
that's why, like, unlike what Ainge did last time, he's got to trade those picks while they still have unprotected value, instead of like waiting until that season and then the Cavs are good and like, oh crap, it's going to be like the 25th pick, they trade it then. You got to do like kind of like what the Clippers did with that Miami Heat unprotected first that got traded like 8 times. But like use picks like that to get value when teams aren't like, oh, well, maybe in 4 years Miami won't be good, you know? So yeah, they have to take advantage of it. I don't think Ainge can do the same thing he did in Boston, and that was just hoard all the picks and then draft players and just keep doing that. So it'll be really interesting to see if his tendency to want to keep those picks outweighs his eye for improving the team and making good moves with them to put the best possible team on the floor. But yeah, he's obviously getting a lot of praise, but I mean, how hard is it to go to a new situation and you have 2 stars you can trade and get a bunch of picks? I don't think he's done anything yet. Now, if he builds it up from here, like what did Cronin say? It's easy to tear it down, right? It's hard to build it back up. So if he builds it back up and Utah gets right back to where they were, and they're like a top seed in the West in 5 years or whatever, then you can give him props for tearing it down and building it right back up again. But that's really hard to do. And a city like Utah that isn't really known to get players to want to go there. There's a lot of players that actually hate Utah and stuff like that. So, I mean, they could very easily become the Kings too and go in the other direction and not hit on these picks, and
which I'm cool with, man.
Yeah, it could just be a disaster from here on out. So I'm not gonna like Ainge is doing everything he should have done to this point, and it's what pretty much any GM, if you were a teardown GM, would have done to get the most for Gobert and Mitchell and start over. But he's gotta hit on the picks or do something with them.
The more I think about it, the less I think he's done it. I don't think he's done a good job. I don't think he's done a bad job. I don't think he's done a good job though, because they didn't get one like blue chip prospect back. Some people say that's Colin Sexton, but you're talking about a guy who just put up good stats on a bad team, and it's questionable whether his game translates to winning, and is coming off a torn ACL.
Well, they very clearly valued unprotected picks over getting
but that's the problem is they didn't get a blue chip young prospect, and they didn't get a draft pick where it was like, oh yeah, that's going to be a good draft pick.
Well, I mean, you never know.
You never know, but that's the thing is like normally when you trade like a player, a young borderline superstar, and then like the best defensive center in the game, right? Like you trade 2 players of that caliber, normally if you do a good job, you get a sure thing back, like a blue chip young prospect, like a guy who's like, yeah, he's a young star. At the very worst, it's like an RJ Barrett, right? But they didn't even get that back. Like, or it's like a Boston case where it's like, oh yeah, we're getting unprotected picks and Brooklyn is definitely going to suck a few years from now because we're trading them like 36-year-old Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, right? So those picks are very, very likely to be really, really good. Neither is the case for Utah. So all the people giving him props, I don't agree with it. I don't think he's done a bad job, but I don't think he's done a good job, because if you did a good job, you would have gotten like a blue chip young prospect that's like, yeah, he's either a future star or like already a star, at least like an Anthony Simons caliber guy, right? Or you get back a pick that you know or are very confident in being good. I can't say that.
I know neither of us are high on Kessler, but he is a rookie. And I think you have to consider Agbaji a first-round pick as well. So
they're not blue chip young prospects.
I'm not saying they are, but this is what it was. Like they're not getting 5 first-round picks basically for Gobert if they get that blue chip prospect. They had to choose one or the other, and Ainge loves his draft picks and wants to do it that way. So I don't think it's a matter of they should have gotten a blue chip prospect. I think he just chose picks. Which,
well, that's why I haven't said it. That's why I'm saying I don't think he did a bad job for that reason. But like, I can't give him props when he didn't do that.
Well, I mean, I think you have to wait to see what he does with the picks, because if he drafts well and he finds those blue chip prospects with those picks, then that's absolutely the right decision. And plus, like I said,
he'll get props for those moves.
They're going to be bad too, so his picks should look in the draft next year. All they have to do is tank 1 year, and they should get a blue chip prospect out of that draft, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, but it's easy to just tear a team down and tank this year. Like, you could have traded him for nothing, and you still accomplish that, right? So I'm not going to give him props for that. But like, yeah, it could turn into, if he uses the picks well, then yeah, he'll get props for that once he does that. But like, right now, I can't give him props. Right now, I can't. If he turns it into like, if some super team 5 years from now, 6 years from now, and this started that process, then yes, I will give him props, like starting with this move. These moves set up this chain of events or transactions that helped him build the team to where it is 5 years down the line, where it's a super team. But without any sure thing, I can't give him props right now. Because it could easily, like you said, backfire. They could be the next Sacramento Kings, because they did not get back a pick that I have a super high confidence in is going to be a top 5 pick, and they didn't get back a blue chip young prospect that you can have confidence in being a star.
Aeromancer puts it better than what I was trying to say. But he says, the good thing about picks is they don't contribute to winning. So it makes your own picks better. Like, so that's the thing. If he gets R.J. Barrett and Obi Toppin, they might not be bad enough to get that blue chip if you don't consider either of those guys a blue chip, right? So
yeah, but like, honestly, next year, I think, I don't know, I don't think that Markkanen and Sexton and Agbaji is really that worse. I just think R.J. Barrett plus Toppin has more upside for the future. So I don't even agree with that.
But I think he doesn't want... Like, he just wanted to clear the deck, pretty much. I don't have a problem with that. I like that approach sometimes versus trying to get pieces that'll help you. I don't know. Maybe he just thought none of those guys were blue chips. That's certainly possible. I think you could argue that none of those guys are blue chips.
You just got done saying they could be the next Sacramento Kings.
I know.
Because these picks might not be good. Yes. My whole point is, I'm not criticizing him, okay? I'm not giving him props. That's the reason why I'm not sitting here giving him props.
I just meant, like, it can go either way.
It can.
Personally, if I'm a GM, I would love to have 15 first-round picks over the next few years and all the things that does. So, like, from Ainge's perspective, I think he's looking at it
I understand it, yes.
I'm a mastermind. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do all these things that I did in Boston, right? And this time I'm going to make a title team, and I'm going to get all the credit because this is all me, right?
So, absolutely. I absolutely get it. I'm not even saying that's necessarily the worst path, but I can't give somebody props for trading 2 all-star, 1 borderline superstar caliber players without getting a single sure thing back. I can't give him props for that. Like, if he turns that into something, then I'll give him props. Like, that's my whole point. Are you giving him props?
No, that was my point too.
So we're in agreement.
He's got to do it, but yeah,
I understand the logic, absolutely. That's why I'm not criticizing it. That's why I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I'm not giving him props either.
Sure.
So, But a lot of people were like, oh man, if Portland could only have taken Ainge and interviewed him and brought him in instead of Cronin, it's like, man, I couldn't imagine if we just traded Dame for only draft picks that might not be good. No. No. Like, that would be disgusting. Right?
Yeah. As Chris Brandlin points out, how about trading 3 starters for a rotation player?
Yeah. I mean, imagine trading a superstar, though, and not knowing if you even got back a rotation player outside of, like, Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton. Yeah, I don't know. That's tough, man. I get it, but I was baffled by people saying, oh, man, if only we could have gotten Ainge, because you just traded these guys for draft picks and some, like, okay pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. As much as, like, you can make a case that trading Dame for draft picks is the right move, I'm glad that we aren't in a position to have to deal with that right now.
Yep, absolutely. So, what else? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, fun stream. Glad we got some cool news to talk about. It's always fun when a big trade goes down.
Yep. One final thing. Brett says T did say he's not doing this right. Sounds like criticism. I don't know where I said he's not doing this right, but I mean, I said it's not bad, man. So it's not criticism. I'm just not giving him props. So work on the listening there. Anyway, I'm happy with our direction right now. I'm looking forward to next season. All right. I am happy that we didn't trade Dame. I mean, could you imagine trading Dame for this package? Hell no, right? But now it's props because he traded Donovan Mitchell for it. I don't get it. We will have a stream on Saturday. We will have a Believe in Blazers podcast on Sunday. Then we'll have Blazers Uprise live on Monday. Do you know when your guest feature is coming out?
No, he just said sometime next week. I know he dropped the first one. He talked to a guy from the Chicago Bulls today, so I'm assuming he's going to do like one a day or something.
Yeah. So no idea when that's coming out, but I'm really looking forward to listening to that. So we will tag everybody in the Discord when anything we drop goes live. When our fantasy football draft goes live on Saturday, which is what's on Saturday. When that goes live, we'll tag everybody in the Discord. Believe in Blazers podcast, we'll tag everybody. And then when Eric has that drop, he will tweet it out. And we will tag everybody in the Discord. So if you're not in the Discord, let me make a new link, because I know the links always like expire, and I always keep them in the description, but they never work. There is the new Discord invite. I put it in the stream chat, and I will also
right channel this time.
I hope so.
Hey, welcome Zach back to the Discord.
Last time I plugged the Discord in the chat, I plugged our like kind of private gaming server, and the people were joining, and I had to message them and say, sorry, I plugged the wrong Discord. So apologies for that last stream. This is the right Discord. Yeah, we compromised the gaming Discord, Eric. Yeah, it was bad. So that's the right Discord. I put it in the description, so if you're watching this back after the stream has been live, that should work for our Discord, and we tag everybody when it drops, all right, when anything drops, just to keep you guys updated. Top 100 Players series over on the main channel. There's a link to the main channel in the description box below if you're not familiar with that. I'm dropping that over the next 11 days. Daily uploads through the start of the season, all right? So stay tuned for that. Eric will have a mid-September CBA video. We're going to get him on the videos a little bit more. I know you guys enjoyed that mailbag he dropped, so we'll work on trying to give you guys what you want. And what's the word? Satiating their needs? I don't know the word, chat. But anyway, anything else, Eric?
Awkward. No, thanks everyone for watching, and thank you so much. Appreciate all of you.
Satiate.
And yeah. Have a good night.
Yep. Have a good rest of your nights. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.